Welcome to Ben and Curt Till It Hurts, the culture cast caught at the crossroads of curation and castration. I'm your host, Ben.
And I'm Curt.
Also your host.
Also your host, your co-host, Curt.
How are you doing, Curt?
I am all right.
Yeah? You doing okay?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah. One of the big holidays is over.
Yeah.
We're heading into this episode, I believe, will go up. I don't know exactly what day in December, but...
It'll go up in December,
December, guaranteed.
Yep. So we're headed towards the holiday. You had a good Thanksgiving?
Yeah, Thanksgiving was good.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed mine. I went to the doctor today, and I got some not awesome news. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but I am fat.
Yeah, I've noticed.
And people are now saying I'm too fat,
and
I need to stop being so fat.
As you get older and older, you can stay the same size, but as you get older, It gets worse and worse.
That's what I'm not. I am larger than I have been, but I'm not that much larger. But apparently, as you approach 30, being that size, as you know, as a 17-year-old that size, way less good for the 30-year-old. So
your heart's just working harder and harder.
Luckily, my blood pressure not bad. I just need to be less Curt. So there's just too much Curt.
This podcast will feel lighter on your ears.
Wait, I hope this news comes as shocking to all of our listeners who haven't seen me and don't know how fat and horrible I am. But
I don't think you have a big voice generally.
Yeah, I kind of have a nasally up. Higher register,
than maybe people would expect.
Yeah. I hope people think I'm a thin black man. That's what I've always hoped.
I bet nobody knows that I'm 3 feet tall.
That's true. You live in a jar.
Literally, you just pop the jar open every Wednesday when it's time to record. You pop that jar open. You give that magic lamp a little rub. Come on out. It's time to record.
It's time to record, little Ben.
Yeah. Let's give the people what they want.
Yes.
All right. Let's continue our holiday gift guide. What are we covering this week?
We are covering a lot today. But honestly, I'm so excited to do this because I really think this is kind of where the discussion really gets interesting. Because not that it wasn't before. I think the battle, quote unquote, between your 16-bit consoles, where your bit wars and all that. I think that's an interesting story. But what is really interesting to me is when consoles knew, I think to some extent, that disc-based games were the future, and you kind of had some more third-party consoles coming in, and you kind of had some that jumped on the disc-based console and some that were more apprehensive. I think this was there were more differences in choosing which console to buy than there were previous to this point.
I'm going to take it to a personal place, and I'm just going to say that these are the consoles of my childhood and my adolescence, which means that psychologically speaking, they're the ones that I imprinted upon.
Yeah.
These are the consoles that to me are video game consoles. When I think of a console, I think N64 and GameCube, and then,
everything else was happening.
Everything, yeah. Yeah, everything else was going on. I was aware of it, but only so that I could argue about it on internet message boards.
I was just alone. Sometimes I would have, I would call them LAN parties, but we were not on the same servers or on online games. We were I had friends, and we would bring 9 young, sweaty, stinky boys with 9 giant tube TVs.
Fucking and just dear penthouse. I never thought this would happen to me.
And just take over someone's living room for a weekend and have brownouts around the town, and just from the sheer...
The cops would show up because they thought you were running a grow operation.
Yeah, but no.
Nope.
There was just bright blue lights shining out
The
of
only
every
thing
window.
that's growing is the stench.
Yeah. They only came once. Yeah, so today, the list of consoles is the Sega Saturn, the Sega Dreamcast, the Sony PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo 64, PlayStation 2, and the GameCube.
Yep.
That's a lot. But I think we'll be good. We've limited the focus.
Each of us has picked 5 games that we think are the games worth remembering from this console. You went for best, right? The games that you most enjoy.
Yeah, that I enjoy the most, especially on some of the ones where I didn't have a lot of experience with them, like the Sega Saturn, because no one fucking owned a Sega Saturn.
Yeah,
right?
no, I think they sold 4 of them.
Yeah, I knew one guy who owned one, and it made sense that he owned one. Let's say that.
He also owned a fucking Nomad, the Sega Nomad.
So I think the games that I have are like, they may be the only games I played on them, but I have good things to say about them, I guess. So yeah, that's me. And you kind of went to a different approach.
Well, I am pompous, so I decided that I am the arbiter of all that is important in culture, and that I could therefore name the games that are most worth remembering from these consoles, the games that have had the biggest impact, that I think say the most good things about what video games can be.
I love it. I think this is a great dual approach.
Yeah.
Kind of have you approach this with this overarching knowledge of video games. I am a child trapped in a man's body that can just tell you what I enjoy, and I don't even know why I enjoy it. It's just good.
It's just good. I don't know. You try it. It's good.
Okay.
What do we want to start with?
I think Sega Saturn came first.
Sega Saturn. All right. I didn't write down any games from the Sega Saturn. The Sega Saturn is lost to history, for all I'm concerned.
Okay. I have 4, and it's there. Very little I can say about them. 1, Croc. It's fine.
Fucking Croc.
It's not a very great game, but it's your standard platformer for that console.
Didn't Croc also come out for the PS1?
It was on the PS1 as well, and it's fine. It's just it's a fine platformer.
It's another platformer.
Virtua Fighter 2 really looks awful. Did not age well.
I think the graphics actually look pretty good on VF2. Yeah. I like that 90s style of pixelated 3D renderings. Yeah.
With their square heads.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love a square head.
But that was a good fighting game. Yeah. And I think that it really showcased, it was probably one of the best examples of kind of like what the Saturn could do. And it was really cool to see a fighting game in that. It was like a 3D, but still like a side-by-side fighter. So it really added a lot of depth to it. And then the other 2 were both Sonic games. Still pissed about that, by the way. We really need to...
All right.
Okay.
Man, we'll do a Sonic series at some point.
And these are both pretty awful Sonic games, but Sonic 3D Blast had some... It was not a good game, but it had some... It was kind of like the big seller for it. And I remember being a kid and just being like, thinking how crazy it was, not having played it yet, but that Sonic could go in any direction. Like, that was mind-blowing.
Well, you're locked to the 2D plane in the other Sonic games.
And so just having that, even if you're just like running over weird, horrible 3D shapes, it was fun. And then Sonic R, I think, is an interesting game.
Was that a racing game?
It's a racing game, but the thing that I think is so kind of cool about it, and the controls are not great, but they're interesting.
Okay.
And what I liked about it was that instead of, with most racing games, like you would hold X or A to accelerate, in Sonic R, you held the joystick forward to accelerate. So obviously that kind of leads you to wonder, like, well, how do you steer then? And the answer is that
you use the A and X buttons.
No, you still use the joystick, so you're holding it forward, and then you kind of have to like turn it left and right a little bit, but if you turn it too much, you like run into a wall. And it really did feel like kind of a cool experience, because it almost felt like this like street luge type of racing where it was a very kind of natural surfing style kind of movement that didn't work great, but it was definitely interesting. And I think it's fun to at least experience it, because most racing games, and that's not a bad thing about racing games, but most racing games, you pick it up, you know how to slam this button and press the forward.
Especially in the modern day,
left and right.
Control systems have flattened out so much. No one is innovating in that space anymore.
So I just thought it was an interesting.
Did you ever play
approach.
Mad Dash Racing on the Xbox?
No.
That game sounds similar to Sonic R. Like, I don't quote me on this, but that game had some weird ass controls too, and they might have been weird in the same way Sonic R was weird. But yeah, that's the Saturn.
Yeah,
how are we doing? Are we ahead of schedule?
How the fuck did that take 10 minutes?
We're 10 minutes in already. We haven't talked about anything.
Sega Dreamcast.
All right, Dreamcast is next?
I guess.
What the fuck are we doing?
I don't know.
Let's go chronological, all right?
Okay, yeah, I thought we were.
N64 came out before the Dreamcast.
I did not know
The Dreamcast came out on September 9th, 1999.
I believe you. I believe you. Calm down.
Listen, it's the equivalent of Armistice Day. World War I ended at the 11th hour. of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918 or something, right?
Okay.
Whenever World War I ended. Sega, and in keeping with that proud tradition, they wanted to release theirs on a matching date, so they did it on September 9th, 1999.
Okay.
To herald in the new millennium.
Quality of the games. Is it crazy that I assumed the N64 came out afterward? Because
it's not crazy. It's not crazy.
What do you have about the Dreamcast?
About the Dreamcast?
I only have 3 games.
Are we talking about the Dreamcast or N64?
No, N64. I'm so sorry.
What are we doing?
That was next in my notes, and I
shut it down.
Yep. Start over. No time.
We've got to start this over and over and over and over again until we can cover the Saturn in less than 4 minutes. It's a time attack.
I have played one. Yeah. That's it. That's all I've
never seen a Sega Saturn.
They're pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a cool looking system. Little flip top.
The guy that I knew
looks a lot like the Dreamcast, though.
Yeah. Well, the guy that I knew that owned one, he was like a 30-something that like still lived with his parents. So not that there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but he was just the type of dude that had the money to spend on a Saturn, which was very expensive. So I mean, not many people had them.
No, yeah.
Anyway.
All right, N64. Do we want to go game for game? Like I'll say a game and then you say a game? All right. My first game on the N64 is the game on the N64. It's Super Mario 64.
Okay.
Yeah, Super Mario 64 is one of the most important video games ever made. It's one of those situations, it's the first 3D platformer, and it paved the way for all 3D games in the future.
Yes.
It established how 3D games are designed, the kind of the level design of it, where you're walking through and you see things off in the distance. We were playing Super Mario 64 last week and talking about Bob-omb Battlefield.
And I'm so grateful that we played it last week, because I think I've even said on the podcast that I think that it is dated and that it was great and influential when it came out, but doesn't really hold up anymore. I've had to come back on that, because playing it again and getting into it a little bit was a lot of fun, and then playing it with you to kind of point out some of those more, game designy aspects of why things are cool, or, like where we literally were like walking through the level and being like, if you were experiencing this for the first time, and we were like, man, and then you'd see that thing, and that's pretty cool.
They put a lot of thought into this. Yeah. They really guide you through this. It's a really open-ended, the levels are generally open-ended with a few exceptions, and yeah, they guide you through them so incredibly well. It's a masterpiece.
Agreed.
Yeah.
What do I have? Oh, so next I would say arguably the next most important game on the N64, GoldenEye 007.
All right.
The perfection of a shooter game really kind of set the gold standard for what an FPS game would be, what multiplayer games
on a console.
Would be.
Let's establish that. Fucking Quake was out at the time, which was
I never had a PC when I was a kid, so yeah.
But yeah, as far as console shooters go, that was the gold standard for 5 years essentially.
Yeah. Great level design, fun objectives. One of the best things about GoldenEye, in my opinion, is it is between easy, medium, hard, agent, secret agent, 00 agent. They're perfectly tiered with the amount of objectives and the amount of skill it takes to defeat enemies.
That's such a cool idea that they had also. To have, when you go up through the difficulty levels, it doesn't just make the enemies harder to kill. You actually have different objectives. So on the harder difficulty levels, you're really exploring the levels to their fullest extent.
Yeah, and the biggest thing about that, too, is when you are playing on Agent, like I did mostly when I was a kid, it's really basically a straight line from A to B, and all of your objectives kind of happen on that main path. So when you get good at the game, but not good enough to go up to that next level, that's when you start exploring these levels and saying, like, oh my god, like there's this whole underground tunnel here that I didn't know about, or, I killed a guy who had a key and I don't need to go in that satellite tower, but I'm here looking around and it's really interesting that there's so much stuff in here. And then you kind of would work up. For me, that's how it went. I would explore those areas and then say, okay, I think I can do this on Secret Agent because I know where things are now. And that was how it went for me.
Yeah. And, I mentioned Quake, but I don't think that Quake is far and away a much better game than GoldenEye. I think that they're aiming at two different stars, They're heading towards two different objectives. In Quake, the levels are pretty abstract. They're like these abstract, fantastical. I don't know if you ever played Quake.
No, I didn't.
Quake's awesome. You should try it out sometime. But the levels are abstract. It's like Doom, Doom has light trappings of being kind of like real places, but it's mostly like, yeah, we've plotted this maze out for you. Enjoy the maze. Enjoy the monsters. Whereas GoldenEye, these places feel like real places to the extent that the technology was capable of at the time. Like the first level is the dam, right?
Yep.
The iconic first level. As we all know, it's been established to be the best level in GoldenEye. And it's a dam. It's not like a weird abstraction of a dam. It's like, no, here's the part where I'm on the dam.
Yeah.
In a video game in fucking 1996. It was incredible. I think it still looks really good, too.
I think I agree. And the craziest thing for me that added to that realism of the game was I got that game before I had ever heard of James Bond, so I had not seen the movie GoldenEye. Mm-hmm. But I got super into the game. And then when I saw GoldenEye, being able to, like, oh my god, that's that level. Like, that's why, and even it's kind of funny because in the movie he'll be like in one scene for like 2 seconds and then there's a whole level based around it. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of cool. You can go through that movie and plot out the levels of the game. Yeah. They took a lot of care in making those levels, and they feel like the parts in the movie.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary game. My next game is The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask.
Ah, yes. I didn't put any Zelda games because I knew you would.
Man, yeah, you were playing the meta game.
We're getting the optimal.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Sorry.
Blew that.
Yeah, The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. It was a hard choice for me between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I kind of wanted to put them both on, but then I would have had to cut some other games that I really liked. And ultimately, I think that Ocarina of Time was like a test for what Majora's Mask eventually created. Super Mario 64 invented a lot of the level design ideas that we use still today, but Zelda Majora's Mask was where they took those fundamental ideas and then started branching off in other directions with them. The idea of having a living, breathing town that you explore, and you explore the schedules of the people who live in it, and then you go off on these spokes of a wheel in the different directions from the town to these other areas that are also living and breathing, and people, I don't think people really have schedules in the other areas, but things happen still. Yeah. Just an excellent game. A game that still holds up today. Play the N64 original if you're going to play it. I think they made some changes on the 3DS version that I don't really like.
I haven't played that one. I actually forgot about that.
Yeah, but either way, whatever system you play it on, it's just an amazing game.
I would agree with that. I think I would. It's hard for me to say. A lot of me does want to say that Majora's Mask is better than Ocarina of Time. Maybe not as influential, but I think it's just one of those perfect games that took everything Ocarina of, that its predecessor did and just made it better. Mm. And I think that for me, it's just like the tone of the game. It's just this moody, foreboding. It's a scary place to be at first until you really get a hold.
It's overwhelming.
It really is. Especially before you learn the songs that can slow down time and do things like that, and you learn that you have to get rid of certain items or you'll lose them. Mm-hmm. You just keep watching that sundial and you're like, oh, I'm like, how can I ever accomplish anything? I'm scared the whole time of losing my progress. Mm-hmm. And it's just really interesting. Some really interesting outlooks on life in that game too, that really just kind of, when I walked away from Ocarina of Time, I thought like, what a great game. Majora's Mask really kind of makes you think about life more, I think, and that, maybe,
well, like you're living through the last 3 days of this town, and they didn't sugarcoat it. These people know they're all gonna die, yeah. And they're all acting like they're gonna die because they don't know that you're working to save them.
Yeah,
and I'm whatever. I'm not gonna get into that, but you're right. The tone of it is part of what makes it so overwhelming. Everything is happy at first, and then each day in, Clocktown is the central town, has different music, and the music on the third day is just so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're walking around and talking to all these people who you've gotten to know over time, and they're all like, everything's about to end.
Especially, I mean, for everything that you can say that's good about Majora's Mask, that much greatness can be said about just the Anju or whatever her name is story arc. What is it?
Cafe and Anju.
Yeah, like that changes you when you learn through those characters over the course of 3 days, and you're right up to the last minute if you finish that story, and it's thrilling.
Yeah. If you break Majora's Mask down into its component parts, you've got like the typical Zelda game with the dungeons and the different areas and all that, but you also have this meta game of collecting items and helping people with their problems, which is a fully fleshed out game in its own right, and the two connect to each other in different ways. But yeah, the Cafe and Anju quest is like, that's the crowning achievement of the helping people portion of the game, which also let us not forget that game is one of the few games that has done questing correctly, because it doesn't just put a little map marker on your map that you have to walk towards. You actually have to think about where you're going and what the character of the different areas is, and where's this character going to be at this time? It's not like you get a quest marker that you just need to follow.
Yeah.
Anyway, fucking old man video games over here.
So one of my favorite things quickly about that relates to my next thing is I really loved collecting the masks. Even if you didn't need them for anything, it was always hard not to collect them all. But that basically was just a way for me to say, like, my next N64 choice. My personal choice is Donkey Kong 64, but really I think any of those Rareware collectathon games, whether it was Banjo-Kazooie or Banjo-Tooie or Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Conker's Bad Fur Day is a very different thing.
I have never played it.
You have never played it. It's fine. It starts off as a parody of those games and then turns into a parody of a bunch of other video game genres throughout. Oh, okay. So yeah, Conker's Bad Fur Day, I would exclude that.
I will have to agree, because I assume they were all relatively the same thing. I love Donkey Kong 64. I think that a lot of people prefer Banjo-Kazooie because Donkey Kong 64 starts to feel a little tedious with the amount of collecting you have to do. But I always liked that. I always really enjoyed collecting and getting all the blueprints.
You enjoy collecting to this day.
Yeah, I really do. I think it all comes down. You can blame it all on Pokemon, but I
think you can blame a lot of things on Pokemon.
Probably could. And I just think I really like. They did what Donkey Kong, what Mario 64 did for Mario. You had a game that was a 2D side-scroller that were great in their own right, and then you just made it a 3D world. And Donkey Kong 64 because it came out afterward, was able to do what Mario 64 couldn't, where they just added all these characters with different abilities, and now you need this character's abilities to access this area. And similar to what Mario 64 did, where, we were talking about Bomb on Battlefield, you can go there, but you can't use the fly cap yet, so you have to come back once you have the fly cap. And Donkey Kong 64 took that idea pretty much to the max, where you would have to revisit each level multiple times with different Kongs to really explore the whole thing. Not
a fan of Donkey Kong 64. I've been thinking about it more since we talked about it. I'm not a collectibles guy.
It's so disappointing to me, because you're not, I don't say you're not wrong. Obviously you're not wrong. It's your opinion. But a lot of people feel that way. They like the style and look of the game, but they would much rather play like a Banjo-Kazooie, where you get to do that same stuff, but not to the same extreme extent.
If I'm firing up Donkey Kong 64, it's for one reason and one reason only, and it's to hear the DK rap at the beginning. The first rap song I ever loved.
Oh, yeah.
I memorized it.
Yeah.
I still remember some of it.
I think if it's one of those things where if I got like the first line of it, the whole thing would just like fall. Not on the air. Don't do
that. no. That's a bonus episode. Yeah. That's only for our Patreon backers.
Man, that's a weird road I've thought about going down in the past that I don't know if I can get behind it.
We need to have an audience first.
We'll have our Patreon episode.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your next one?
Mischief Makers.
Never played it.
You ever hear of Mischief Makers?
I've heard of it. Yeah. I almost rented it a few times, but I never did for some reason.
Mischief Makers is one of those games that nobody heard about for weird reasons. It was because it's a weird Japanese game. It's made by Treasure, them of Gunstar Heroes. Just like the most undersung masters of game design. I say they're undersung. They're like cult heroes.
Yeah.
And for me, I didn't play a lot of treasure games when I was young, but Mischief Makers was the one that I did play, and I fell into it deep. It's so unique. It has a really esoteric control scheme. Like, you don't use the control stick. It's one of the games where you actually hold the N64 controller like a Super Nintendo controller.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it took me a long time to figure that out, actually. I was kind of ashamed when I did. I was like, why isn't she moving? But then once you do, it's I would describe the controls, the character controls, as easy to learn, hard to master. You're running around as this little, she's like a robot, and she has like a jetpack on. And her one power is that she can grab things and shake them. And when she shakes them, she says, "Shake, shake." So you end up hearing that a lot. So it's just burned into my brain.
This sounds dope.
Dude, this game rules. We need to get a copy of Mischief Makers up in here and like slap it in your N64, do a Mischief Makers episode.
I would love to. My only fear with that is I believe that game is
really rare.
It's basically a cult classic, and they're pretty hard to get your hands on.
It's like $100 to get a copy, I think. Man, I don't know what happened to that. I think I sold it at a yard sale or something.
That's that shit, man.
Fucking
That's how
stupid.
it goes.
So stupid.
My next game is a similar story.
Well, one thing about Mischief Makers. It's I was saying some bad shit about collectibles, but I think Mischief Makers actually has a well-designed collectible system. First off, you have gems that you collect throughout the levels that you have to use the controls in these crazy, like, intricate ways. That's where the easy to learn, hard to master comes in. You can get through a level easily just by running through it a lot of the time. But then if you want to get all the gems and get the highest score on the level, you have to really explore all the nooks and crannies and use the controls in creative, deep ways. But then, other than the basic gems, you have special gems also. They have some name, I don't know. And at the end of the game, the ending plays on a timer, and the more special gems you got, the longer an ending you get.
Oh. So
to get the full, complete ending, you have to get all of the special gems. Fascinating idea. I've never seen it in any other game.
It makes me it's very different, but it makes me think of Fallout, where to get the more, with each character you encounter and solve their missions or whatever you want to call them, quests, I think the word is, your slideshow ending gets longer and longer and gives you a more fulfilling, leaving of that area.
Yeah, the more thoroughly you explore the game, the more satisfactory an ending you get, or the more full an ending you get. Yeah. Anyway, what's your next game?
My next one, solid contender for my favorite game ever before New Vegas. Harvest Moon 64. Similar to Mischief Makers, kind of a cult hit. I had mine and I let somebody borrow it and they just never gave it back.
Whoa.
And now it's not as expensive as Mischief Makers, but you're paying $40 or $50, I think, for like just a loose cart of Harvest Moon 64. But incredible game. I think a little dated. It's a little buggy, and some of the translation is a little bit weird.
That's Japanese games from the time, though, man.
Yeah, you just kind of...
You roll with it.
But I think... I almost have a hard time explaining why it's so great, because it's really... It doesn't sound awesome. You're a farmer. You move to a farm, and you have to start from nothing, and you raise crops, and then when you get some crops, you start to be like, oh, I have some money now, so I'm going to start raising farm animals. And while you're doing this, you're getting to know people in the town, and you find a love interest, and you get married and have a baby, and you expand, buildings on your farm. And it's such a wholesome game, but the connections you create with these fictional characters over the 3-year course that this game lasts is like, that was the first time I ever experienced anything like that. And I still have like this like warm spot in my heart for like people that aren't real, like, because I just like, I hate to say like I have a tattoo of this, so it means I really like it, because I have a lot of stupid fucking tattoos that I don't care about, but I have a tattoo of potpourri, and that's like one of the love interests in that game, because I remember I was in 6th grade when I started playing that, and just like trying to like woo her was like really fun for me. It was like you have your little routines every day. You take care of your crops and your animals, and you have to like bring a flower to your love interest or whatever. And there are festivals.
Are you talking about the game or real life?
Exactly. It makes your real life fucking suck because it's not as cool as your Harvest Moon 64 life. And it's just a very wholesome game that you can play it and it's fun and you can give up, but like to get those all the achievements and to unlock everything becomes a real part of your life. And I think we've talked about it on the podcast
we
before.
have, yeah. Our Animal Crossing / Harvest Moon episode, we talked a lot of Harvest Moon 64. And, so for more information about Harvest Moon,
you brought up what my soul crushing moment of thinking I was going. We were together the night that I thought I was going to get that final achievement, and I missed it by like one.
It was the one thing Curtis had never done in his favorite game,
and
I watched him fail to do it. By a hair.
Oh.
By it was so close.
You just ripped that wound open. But honestly, that game is so great to me. That doesn't bother me that I failed because it's still there. I can open it up and do it again.
Yep.
And getting through those 3 game years is so much fun that it's worth it. Like, and I think that is what you go for in a game. You want to play it and have fun. And so even when I get to a point where I say I would have to spend 50 to 60 hours doing the same thing again, and I'm like, yeah, maybe not right now, but I will do it someday. I think that really is why that game speaks to me. Do you have another one?
Hell yeah, Paper Mario.
What? Okay, we're on N64. Yeah. I never played this one much.
Paper Mario is really cool. Paper Mario, I think, is not the only. Paper Mario is one of the few JRPGs that's really worth playing. They did so much unique stuff with the idea of a Japanese RPG of like, all right, you have you and your little party members, and it's all very abstracted. It's not like most Western RPGs seem to have some idea of like, oh, we're like Dungeons and Dragons. We're a simulation of actual combat. Whereas this is like, yeah, Mario jumps on his head. If you time your button press correctly, it does more damage. If you time your button press terribly, it does less damage. When the enemy runs up to attack you, you time your button press correctly and you block some of the damage, or maybe even all of the damage. I forget.
Yeah.
But it's a great melding of platformer and RPG. You never played it?
I played it a little bit. I played a lot of Super Mario RPG, and then I played more Thousand Year Door.
Paper Mario.
Remember how I said I was so fat? It's just all salad dressing.
Your subconscious is like pushing.
I haven't eaten in like 2 hours. I'm gonna die. Thousand Year Door.
Yep. Yeah, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door was a hard cut off my GameCube list.
Wow, it didn't make the cut?
It didn't make the cut, but barely.
Yeah, that's true.
Barely. It was rough. It's a rough list, and I'm still kind of thinking about it.
I hope we don't have much crossover, so we can really dig
into it. Anyway, that's all I have to say about Paper Mario. It's really good.
I actually only have one more because Super Mario 64 was also on my list. And my last one, probably not a big surprise, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. What a fun game. And just...
It's a really good version on the N64, I think.
I personally think the N64 version is a better game than the PlayStation one.
I know a lot of people disagree with that.
And I think the main 2 reasons that the people think the PlayStation one is superior is that it has the whole versions of songs with the lyrics and stuff. The N64 just has like 20-second loops of the main riffs or whatever.
Yep.
Which, fine, I will give you that. The PlayStation does win in that. But the other thing is that people will argue that the PlayStation version looks better. The graphics are a lot better. But I think people are misled by that because... It's one of those interesting times where one is on a disc and one is on a cartridge. And I think that if you... I listened to a podcast about the game, and they had kind of said, and I really agree with them, if you take a screenshot of the game from each console, the PlayStation version does look better. But if you're just playing the game, the fluidity of the N64 is a lot better, and it's much, much smoother. And everything just kind of... It doesn't have like a... Yeah. That
it's happening
heat
again.
Yeah, that's happening.
It wants to speak up about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
In the summertime, we get dogs barking when the windows open. In the wintertime, we get my old radiator. And I just think that... I would agree with that. When you play the N64 version, it's a much more fluid experience, which when you're playing a skateboarding game... you want it to be fluid, and I think that alone is enough to make it the superior version.
I think the controller is better on the N64 also.
I would also agree with that, especially I think at this time on the PS1 it was before DualShock.
I thought DualShock came out like 97.
I don't know.
As soon as they saw that everyone loved the analog stick on the N64, they were like, "Oh shit, we need two.
We done fucked up.
We need two analog sticks."
Yep.
Stupid idea. I don't think there should have ever been two analog sticks.
Really?
Anyway, I don't know. I think it made it too easy to make kind of a shitty one size fits all 3D camera control configuration. This is one of my less popular opinions. Right? I know everybody fucking loves the standard controller. It's like,
Ben's over here with the 4 C buttons.
They perfected it. Yeah, I think the C buttons are a great idea. I think the GameCube controller is the only controller that's ever been better than the N64 controller. That's another unpopular opinion.
People fucking hate the GameCube controller. Mm-hmm. I think it's perfection.
I think it's the best controller ever made. It feels so natural. Like your thumb doesn't move in like a diamond shape.
Yeah.
Your thumb moves. You've got the one big part of your thumb that you use to mash the A button, yep. And then you've got you push your thumb down to move to the B button. The X button and Y button are the little kidney stones on the side. Fucking kidney stones.
That's really what the best part about it is that you're hovering over your most important button,
yeah.
But you don't need to move your hand to press the other three.
Fucking perfection. The Z button,
yep.
One of the worst things about modern controllers is that you have to use your middle and pointer fingers to hit.
Who the fuck does that?
No, I don't know, man.
Ben.
Sometimes you need to do it, all right? For fucking Dark Souls, it's like, all right, I need to parry with this one and then boom, throw my shield up, and I don't know. Don't come at me about this. But the point is, the GameCube controller is the best controller of all time. I can
get behind that.
Yeah. That's well off topic. You want to hear my next game?
Yes, I do.
All right, Diddy Kong fucking Racing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a Mario Kart 64 guy. I'm a Diddy Kong Racing guy. All right. Diddy Kong Racing is an open world kart racer. Have you ever played it?
I have a thing about it. So
right.
You continue.
Diddy Kong Racing is an open world kart racer. I don't think there's ever been another one. It's a joy to explore the overworld, and it's really fun to race on the tracks. The tracks are maybe not the best designed tracks that you could ever have, and the power-ups are a little uninspired at times, let's say, but that idea of having that open world that you can just drive around into your heart's content and explore and find all the nooks and crannies of. Also, I was young when I played it, so I probably liked it more than I should have.
Yeah.
I haven't really returned to it, but I love that game. I'm not gonna stop.
So I had Mario Kart, and I was a huge Mario Kart fan. And as I got older, I never even played Diddy Kong Racing. And then when I got older, I was seeing that like every best N64 games list had Diddy Kong Racing on it. So I bought a copy of it, and I've played it literally maybe like 2 or 3 times, and I really see what they were going for, and I see the ways that it is superior to Mario Kart. But I think just as far as like level design, and if I want to play a racing game, not an experimental racing game, I play Mario Kart more often. But I really do appreciate what Diddy Kong Racing did. And I will say that I haven't played this myself, but Sega All-Stars Racing, I think it came out on the Xbox 360 and like the 3DS. A lot of people, when that came out, that had been Mario Kart fans, were like, they jumped ship to that. And that was a very similar style, I believe, to Diddy Kong Racing. They had the water tracks and the flying, and you could kind of explore more and go all out on that. But yeah, it's a great game. I just never played it much. Yep.
That's the N64, folks.
That's it.
It's a pretty good console.
Next, what do we have?
PlayStation.
Okay, I didn't want to say the wrong one again.
Next, we're going to be talking about the Xbox.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, PlayStation. What do you think of the PlayStation? Give me a game.
I will give you a game. Harvest Moon: Back to Nature. That was kind of I never had a PlayStation, so I had borrowed them for longer periods of time. For me, it was just that came directly after Harvest Moon 64, and it just took that what the Harvest Moon 64 did and kind of just like made it look insane. It just like upgraded everything. I think it's aged worse, but at the time it was just like, this is fucking incredible. And Harvest Moon games were kind of hard to come by because they didn't have a lot of distribution. They were not super popular. And it was just a great way to spend like the next 120 hours of your life.
Jesus. Now, the thing about Harvest Moon games is that they really are Japanese RPGs. They're JRPGs, but without the battles.
Yep.
Right? The battle system is replaced with a farming system. Because JRPGs are also all about building relationships with the characters that you play as and play with.
Yep.
That's a fascinating genre entry to me. My first PlayStation game is Klonoa Door to Phantomile. Or Phantomile. I forget how you pronounce it.
I was fully prepared for all 5 of your games to be JRPGs I've never heard of. Because I never really had a PlayStation, and I never got into JRPGs that much, but I do know... Is this a JRPG?
No, it's not.
Oh, god damn it.
I have one JRPG on my list.
Okay.
And it's not one that people like.
So, well, I guess it kind of remains the same in that there were a lot of popular games on the PlayStation that have like this huge cult following that didn't hit with like the mainstream. Mm-hmm. A lot of which were JRPG games, but there were tons of games that weren't.
Well, I don't know how you compiled your lists, but the way that I did my list was I just went through the Wikipedia entry list of PlayStation games or N64 games or what have you, and just picked out the ones that I remember really liking, and then just etched out 5 from those. So going through the PlayStation list, especially compared to the N64 list, there are so many more games on the PlayStation. And so many fewer of them are worth remembering, in my opinion. I don't think the PlayStation is as good a console as the N64. Spoiler alert, I guess. Yeah. But, again, that's an unpopular opinion. Klonoa Door to Phantomile is a platformer. 2D platformer. They call it 2.5D, but the platforming occurs mostly on a 2D plane. The world is rendered in 3D. So as you're moving along the 2D plane, your character is actually moving around curves. So the camera is kind of turning with the character. It's hard to describe exactly what happens, but it gives you this incredible 3-dimensional view of the level. And then you move on a 2D plane through that level. It has this cool idea about you're not just like hopping on enemies' heads to kill them. You're actually picking up enemies and throwing them at each other. I guess it's a little like Super Mario Brothers 2.
Yeah.
Or Doki Doki Panic. Yeah. But it's a tight game. It looks beautiful. It just has this incredible art. What's your game?
All right. I know we kind of talked about this last time. I don't even have a whole lot to say about it, but I don't think Crash Bandicoot needs to be written off as much as...
I'm not going to say anything.
Okay, that's fine. I thought that was kind of the bundle game that came with it, so I think a lot of people have a lot of fond memories of this game. And I never had a PlayStation, but my friend did, and we played it a lot. And I just remember it being a very fun experience, as I can't say anything about it being one of the best games of all time, or even one of the best games on the PlayStation, but I know that a lot of people from different age groups were able to play and have a lot of fun. I think he was a fun character, and I think maybe it hasn't aged well, but I think they tried to do some cool stuff with the fake 3D thing they kind of had going on, and I just think it was pretty alright.
It was real 3D. It wasn't 3D level design, but it was 3D rendering, and they did some incredible technical wizardry with that. Anyway, we talked about that a bit last time, or a couple episodes ago. My next game is Resident Evil.
Yes.
Yeah. It was a hard choice which of the Resident Evil games on the PlayStation to put on here, but I think that the original is such a towering achievement of survival horror game design that you cannot deny it. And it looks so weird too. Like it's this weird mansion full of just like flat textures and pre-rendered backgrounds, and the characters are all pixelated, and all the puzzles have to do with these abstract shapes that you need to move from place to place. And
I started playing Resident Evil the remake last weekend, and I don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast, but I have, for like the past 10 years, been like, yeah, Resident Evil games were super cool. Now they're super dated, super hard to play, not very much fun anymore. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with me, because I've been so wrong. I thought Resident Evil 4 completely broke the mold and just rendered all old Resident Evil games useless, and I was so wrong. Resident Evil is a fucking fantastic achievement in gaming. I had played it wrong. That game, if you know everything you're doing, I think like the record, not the record time, but there are like achievements you can unlock for beating that game in 3 hours. Like you can skip everything that isn't necessary and beat that game in 3 hours.
And you unlock things for it too.
Yeah,
It gives you a reason to figure the path out.
And I always tried to do that, which is not the point. When you first start playing that game, you should not be trying to beat it in 3 hours. You should get to a point where you can beat it in 3 hours. So when I threw that idea out the window this past weekend and I said, I'm just going to play this game like I didn't know there were achievements for beating it quickly, and it completely changed my perception of the game. You walk into this big spooky mansion, doors are locked, and you have to like find your weird way through this mansion. And I think the best thing in this game is a series of hard choices. And I think that's so unique at the time. You know, like there's a certain hallway where if you walk through it a certain number of times, some big mean dogs jump through the window and you have to use some of your precious ammo to kill them. And it's like, so do you just say fuck it and do you just do it so you can use this easy passageway? Or do you go the whole game not using that particular route?
Well, if you're playing it fresh, then you don't know that's going to happen.
Exactly.
So.
But there are those types of choices where you'll encounter a door where it's like the handle is really wobbly. It probably won't last very long. Yeah. And so you might not know it's exactly 2 times or whatever, but if I go through this door, I might not be able to come back. Or if I can come back, I might not always be able to come back. And what if I really need to come back through at some point because it's a shortcut? And there's just a lot of stuff like that. You can only hold 6 items, so you're always, like, you have your item box in your safe rooms, and you're always like, what do I need? How many spaces can I leave empty to collect new items? Because I know I need a gun. I probably need some backup ammo. I need this key that I still need to get into half the rooms with. We're already down to 3. Should I bring a healing item? What if I need one of these other puzzle pieces? Just a great game.
Yeah, it's
fucking phenomenal.
Game. What's your next game?
That is actually, this will be my last game. Actually, kind of. I shouldn't have even put it. I really loved Parasite Eve.
I thought about putting that on mine.
But I played it once, and all I remember is that I loved it. I played it in middle school, and it was just the same engine as like Resident Evil. It's just
Yeah, it's the same idea. It's the same like tank controls with pre-rendered backgrounds, so the game can look really pretty without overtaxing the PlayStation hardware. I read some stuff about the novel that game is a sequel to this weekend.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it's based on a Japanese novel, I guess, where like the whole idea is mitochondrial Eve, like your mitochondria, the powerhouses in your cells in your body, that they're all this like distributed organism, distributed between all human beings, and that when a certain point is reached, they're all going to come together and like take over a human body. It's like a horror novel. And it's really, the ending sounds super sexist because what ends up happening is there turns out to be a male equivalent of mitochondrial Eve. So when mitochondrial Eve is going to take over the human race and replace the human race with a being that can change its own genetic code, it turns out that that's going to push the male equivalent out of existence. So the male equivalent rises up and destroys the the Eve. I don't know. It sounds super fucked up. It apparently revitalized Japanese horror, though.
That's cool.
Like without that book, we wouldn't have like The Ring, Ju-on.
My biggest thing...
We may have just fucked that up. Maybe The Ring came out before Parasite Eve. I have no idea. Nobody fact-checked that.
The only other thing I have to say about Parasite Eve that kind of made it superior, in my opinion, in some ways to Resident Evil, was that I think the weapon kits in that game were like the coolest thing ever. You'd find weapon kits that would let you could install them on your weapons to upgrade them and stuff, and I really wish they had done that in Resident Evil, although I guess that kind of works against what they were going for, but it was still sick.
I don't know. Sounds pretty cool. I have a couple more games to talk about.
Yeah, please. I only have one, so...
Metal Gear Solid is great.
Never played it.
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid is really a fascinating game. Hideo Kojima is one of the elevated masters of video game design, one of the most unique voices in video game design, and we will all miss him now that I'm pretty sure he's not making video games anymore. What's your last game?
Monster Rancher.
Neat.
fucking obsessed with it.
Yeah. You're a collector, so you've got a lot of CDs.
Yeah.
So it's like I put all my CDs into my PlayStation and they make monsters for me.
And that is the draw of that game. It's a monster breeder game, so you basically the point of the game is that random numbers need to be generated to give you a monster to train and breed, and they found a way to they got those random numbers from different CDs you would put in the PlayStation. So you'd put in a CD, it would read the CD and give you a monster that lived in that CD, which was super fucking cool when I was a kid. Like, that was just... Because it was just stuff you had around the house. You didn't need to, like, buy extra stuff to get new monsters or even get further in the game to get new monsters. You would just root through your house and find every CD you could find and see what monsters were on it. It also added fun of, like, you know, finding a shitty country CD and being like, oh man, I bet the fucking monster on this is stupid. And for some reason the game never really caught on. Like, Monster Rancher has a following, and there are more than one game in the series. There's like 4 or 5, I think, in the franchise, but it just, like, never got huge. It never... I don't know if you would say it's really the same, but it never got close to, like, Pokemon or Digimon or any of those other monster type thing, Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, it never... They had a TV show, but nobody...
Did it have a TV show?
Yeah.
I never heard about that.
Weirdly enough, the little yellow eyeball guy was like the main...
That was the mascot?
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
That was the Pikachu of the...
Yeah, the
it was
Pikachu
literally
of
just...
Monster
It's like,
Rancher.
alright, we took Pikachu, but we made it not a mouse anymore. It's just yellow. It's a yellow blob. And it only has one pulsing eyeball on it. It's like, that's disgusting.
Not nearly as cute. Hope you like it.
Yeah.
The other thing that was interesting about it was... your monsters get old, so they'll either die or need to retire. So it's kind of cool because even if you found this awesome monster that you love to train and you were doing really well with it, you couldn't just beat the game and then never lose again because that monster would die, and then you'd have to find another one. And it helped you train different types and learn their different styles because you didn't feel committed to this one particular monster. Yeah.
All right, my last 2 games. The first one is Silent Hill.
Never played that either.
Silent Hill's an amazing game. It's the best game in the Silent Hill series. A lot of people like Silent Hill 2 also. But yeah, Silent Hill is great. I like it more than Resident Evil. I think that it takes the survival horror stuff to much weirder places. One of the most terrifying moments I've ever experienced in a video game is in Silent Hill when you're in... what is it, the school, I think, and you're exploring these 3 floors, and like the way I experienced it is you get stuck basically, and you're running up and down these hallways, enemies keep kind of coming out at you, and you can't like kill all of them, so it's just, you feel really claustrophobic about this place. It's like, fucking, where do I go next? And then you get into the elevator and you notice that there's another button that fucking wasn't there before, and it goes to a 4th floor. And when you get to the 4th floor, shit pops off. Silent Hill is an amazing game. My last game is the one JRPG on this list of mine. It's Chrono Cross. Sequel to Chrono Trigger. Bananas. It's a bananas game, dude. Like, the reason you go to a JRPG is because the stories are crazy, right?
Yeah.
That's what you want. You don't want a JRPG to have like a grounded literary story. They all try, but Chrono Cross, it's put right out there that it's a sequel to Chrono Trigger. But for the first whole half of the game, you're like, there is literally nothing about this game that is anything like Chrono Trigger, right? No shared characters, no nothing. And then, do you mind if I spoil it?
No, I'm never going to play this.
All right, spoilers, everybody. Halfway through the game, you find out the only reason the characters and world of Chrono Cross exist is because of what happened at the end of Chrono Trigger. So the characters from Chrono Trigger come into the game for a brief period of time, and then
nice.
For the rest of it, you're dealing with the fallout of this revelation. All right, we're almost an hour in.
All right, and we're about halfway, so we're pretty good. All right?
Yeah, we're doing great. Next Dreamcast, I would say.
Okay, I'll make Dreamcast nice and quick.
Mm-hmm.
At Dreamcast's worst abilities, it took arcade games and made them suck. At its best, it took things that other consoles did, or arcade versions, and added some concepts that made them a little bit cooler. Mm-hmm. That's about...
At its best, it made a game where you talk to a fish with a man's face on it.
Yeah.
Seaman.
Yeah.
All right? Seaman
is your list?
Seaman is fucking on my list. Seaman is my list, man. There's no other game like Seaman.
My
Hey You Pikachu is kind of like Seaman, but
Hey You Pikachu is pretty cool.
Hey You Pikachu is pretty cool. I think that's an appropriate phrase to use for Hey You Pikachu.
That's interesting that they did that.
It's not batshit insane like Seaman, where you're talking to this grouchy Japanese man with the body of a fish.
Yeah, I saw that Angry Video Game Nerd episode of that, but that's really been my only experience. I hadn't heard of it until then.
Seaman is nuts.
Yeah.
Anyway, Seaman's on my list. What's the first game on your list?
Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
All right.
I think that's a great arcade game that they were able to port to your home console, and you could play it, and it was great, and you could not have to spend $1 million in quarters. You just did it all up front on a $50 game.
Crazy Taxi.
Dude, fuck Crazy Taxi.
I love Crazy Taxi.
Remember when I said it takes arcade games and makes them suck?
Citation needed. Crazy Taxi's really good. What's your next game?
I do. Okay. Same deal. House of the Dead 2.
Yeah.
I'm
not a fan.
Yeah.
Typing of the Dead. I'll get with Typing of the Dead. Not on my list, but it's a worthwhile game. Ikaruga.
I don't even know that one.
Ikaruga is like a top-down shooter. It's come out on a bunch of different consoles. Ikaruga's main thing... It's another treasure game, actually. Ikaruga's main thing is that your ship, you can actually phase between black and white. And enemies' bullets are also black and white, as are enemies. When your ship is black, you can absorb black bullets and absorb them for health. And you get hurt by white bullets. And I think your shots do more damage to... white enemies when you're black, and you should do less damage to black enemies, and vice versa when you're white. So they were able to design this insane game where you're switching back and forth between light and dark, and it's a crazy good game.
I like that.
Yeah.
My last thing about the Dreamcast is the Resident Evil games that appeared on it, which I think were like 1, 2, 3, and Code Veronica.
Did they do 1, 2, and 3 on it? All I knew about was Code Veronica.
They did. I think they did. I don't know.
Okay.
But they just kind of took those games that the PlayStation already made fucking incredible, and they just honed them a little bit. Mm-hmm. And they just did a really good job. My main appeal of that was the Dreamcast, which has arguably the worst video game controller of all time. It had like a little... hole.
Yeah, the VMU. We talked about the VMU a couple episodes ago,
yeah,
right?
And that was basically, I thought that shit was awesome.
On the Sonic game, you can go to the Chow Garden.
Yeah. And on Resident Evil, it just showed your health and the amount of bullets you had, so you didn't have to open up your menu to check it out, which I thought was really cool. Kind of I don't know if you'd call that a precursor to like the 3DS or the DS, but it was sick.
It was a gimmick.
Yeah, it was
a cool gimmick. Yeah.
The only thing the Dreamcast did for me as a child was let me know that bits weren't the only thing that mattered. Like, that was really, like, oh, you fucking with 32 and 64 bits? 128 bits. And there's, like, not a single fucking good game on it. Like, oh, okay, well... I think, and that was really that was the last Sega console. That was it. That
was their swan song, and it only lasted like 2 years.
It did not do well.
But I have a theory about this. We'll get to it later. All right.
We'll do that. What's next?
Well, Rez on the Dreamcast for me is.
I'm sorry. You hadn't.
I have 2 more Dreamcast games.
I'm so sorry.
Rez is a really cool, like, behind the back shooter where it starts out as wireframe graphics, and then as you do better and better it's like a on rails shooter, I guess I should say. As you do better and better at locking on and shooting enemies, it actually syncs up with the music, which changes as you do better and better. And the graphics get more and more advanced as you go. So it's like this love letter to the idea of video games. And I love it. It's an incredible work of art. Maybe not all video games are art, but that one is. Another video game that's art is Skies of Arcadia, which I actually only played the GameCube version of, Skies of Arcadia Legends. But I'm counting it on the Dreamcast because my GameCube list was already so overstuffed.
Pretty stacked.
And the only thing they added on the GameCube version was, I think they changed the rates of random encounters, which was badly needed because that is a JRPG that you just encounter random enemies every 3 steps on the Dreamcast version. It's one of the games that has an authentic sense of exploration. And it's themed around this like science fiction sky pirate equivalent of the race to circumnavigate the world, essentially, sort of. I don't know. That's not a real historical thing. Yeah, I guess it is. The race to circumnavigate the Earth. You know, you needed to get to the other place, so you're tired of going east because people keep shutting down and owning the different ways you can get there. So it's like, fuck it, let's all go west.
We'll get there.
Skies of Arcadia is a tight game. That's all I have for the Dreamcast.
So that is the end of that generation of consoles.
Yeah. And the Dreamcast is a midpoint. The Dreamcast is decidedly more advanced than the N64 and the PS1, but a little bit less advanced than the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox.
That is a weird generation, too, because it's I think it might be the only generation, I'm probably so fucking wrong on this, where things just kind of came out like staggered. Usually consoles, I think, come out about the same time as each other. There's a lot of competition, and you want to, like, I think they try to put them out relatively near each other so you don't buy the first one. I don't know if that's true.
I don't know.
That's how I always felt.
PS2 came out a year before the Xbox or the GameCube.
Well, did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because they were so goddamn expensive when they came out. Remember when people died on Black Friday trying to get PS2s?
I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, people got fucking trampled and shit.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I remember it was like the biggest fucking thing ever. Well, I had a babysitter who had like women that worked for her, and her husband both split up on Black Friday. They went to different Walmarts to try to get a PS2, and they each ended up getting one. So they had 2 PS2s, and they were the coolest fucking brand new thing ever. People died trying to get them. They also had a DVD player, so it was like at the time a really big fucking deal. And they after that, you couldn't get one for a really long time because they always had a hard time keeping demand up for new consoles back then. I don't know if they still do now.
Keeping supply up, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, keeping supply up with demand
to meet the demand. Yeah. And I don't remember how much, but those consoles cost $500 when they first came out, I think. I don't remember. But I remember they sold it for so much fucking money because they now had 2. And that was a pretty cool time. Yeah.
With that said, do we want to talk about the PS2?
I don't have a whole lot to say about it.
I have a couple PS2 games on here.
Yeah, me too. All right. You want to go first? Or you want
me
to go?
I'll go. Okay. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Okay.
There's always a question, which Grand Theft Auto game is the best one on the PS2? I think that Grand Theft Auto 3 is a great game, very important to the history of video games because it was the first one that did that. The first modern open world game, with the exception of probably a couple predecessors that I'm forgetting. But for me, San Andreas, with the 3 different city areas connected by countryside, was where the Grand Theft Auto series became what it eventually, grew into. Not that GTA 4 is like that. Whatever. I don't know. It was the first time where things felt authentically living and breathing. With that said, that might just be because it's the one I played first.
How do you feel it fares to Vice City?
I think Vice City is forgettable. Vice City is cool. Also, it's the one I played last.
Yeah.
So, like, there's that.
Coincidence?
There's that, too. The one I played first is the best one. The one I played last is the worst one. So hey, Vice City fans, I know a lot of wonderful people who love Vice City. My beautiful wife loves Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Not loves. I don't know. She doesn't love it. It's not like she talks about it all the time or something. But, I think there's the Mario Kart problem with Grand Theft Auto, which is like when you first play one, the novelty of it makes you fall in love with it, and then you just think about it all the time, and then there's a real sense of diminishing returns as you go farther and farther. What?
Pauly Shore syndrome.
Yeah.
The first Pauly Shore movie you see is the funniest one.
Unless it's Biodome, which is a reprehensible film.
Fuck Biodome.
Biodome is terrible.
Son-in-Law, though.
Son-in-Law is great.
Fucking classic.
Son-in-Law is an amazing I'm getting hyperbolic. Son-in-Law is a good movie. Son-in-Law is a surprisingly good movie.
Way better than you think it's gonna be.
Yeah, because if you've seen Biodome, you think it's gonna make you want to like rip your hair out.
Yeah, where was I going with that?
What's your PS2 game?
I would say this is tough. This is where I get into some like franchise type material.
All right.
I say Tony Hawk 3.
Mm-hmm.
But also I think you can't talk about 3 without talking about Tony Hawk's Underground. So those are both on the PS2. Both fucking fantastic games. I think Tony Hawk 3 was the first. Tony Hawk games just kept getting better and better and better, and they would take what you liked about the game and incorporate it in the sequel and then add a few more things that didn't suck. Mm-hmm. And I think Tony Hawk 3 was like the apex of that.
Tony Hawk 3 was a quantum leap from Tony Hawk 2.
Yeah, certainly. I believe Tony Hawk 3 is on Metacritic, the highest rated game on the PS2.
Wow.
I think it's tied for the top with Grand Theft Auto something.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I forgot to mention my little bit on Grand Theft Auto. That's why I forgot. Where I was
sorry.
going.
Yeah.
I've never been a huge Grand Theft Auto fan. I played some San Andreas, and this is where it gets weird for me because I have to talk about race, which is always weird for me to do.
All right.
I didn't like San Andreas because I felt weird playing it. This is like young man Curt playing it. It made me feel like it was racist because you were doing like fucking B&Es and like eating fried chicken and going to the barber and like that felt weird to me. Like, this feels racist. You don't do fucking breaking and entering in other Grand Theft Auto games. You don't eat fucking fried chicken in other Grand Theft Auto games. But now that I'm older, and I don't know, I've never fucking been to Compton. But I think that pointing out that game was a snapshot of what life was possibly like there.
I have some things to say about that, but continue.
That makes me... I've never played it again, never been a huge Grand Theft Auto fan, but I feel like... I used to be like, that game is fucking racist for making you do that stuff because you're black. Now I see it's a little more complicated, I think, not knowing much about it. But I think it's just a snapshot into a life that is like that, and there probably do exist lives that are like that. Mm-hmm. That's about...
I would say that it's not an authentic snapshot of what life is actually like there, as far as I know, but it is an authentic snapshot of what the media landscape interpreted life as being like there.
That's fair. Any Grand Theft Auto city is that idea turned to 11.
It's a parody of what the media portrays those cities as being like. Because it's all made by people in England, you know? Yeah. It's not... I don't know. But that game's cool.
Yeah.
What else do you got?
This is a kind of a cheap one because I never played much PS2. I had to put the PS2 version of Resident Evil 4. We had discussed how Resident Evil 4 at its core, this is before we were recording, is a GameCube game.
Yeah. But, it was one of the Capcom 5.
Yeah. But the PS2 version did add some stuff to it that was really cool, that is hard to go back and play the GameCube version once you know what you're missing out on.
Like what?
A lot of the... I don't know the words for them, but you know when you can suplex people and it just adds.
You can do that in the GameCube one. What?
No suplexing.
We've had this same conversation several times. I'm pretty sure, and I'm fucking flabbergasted every time because I so clearly remember suplexing people.
And you know what's funny is when I did it on the PS2 version, I thought, is that new? No, you can do that. That's not a new thing. But I believe it is exclusive.
I'm going to look that up. Keep talking about Resident Evil
4. It also added some post-game weapons that added that laser cannon thing that's pretty fun to play around with after you beat the game. Mm-hmm. And that's basically it. It just took a game that is, in my opinion, a GameCube game of perfection. And was like, oh, hey, well... we wanted to make more money, so we'll port it over to here, and here's a few, little things we added to it to make it a little bit different. Also, shout out, I really just think I think that, like I said, the GameCube controller is basically perfection, but I think the controls are also really smooth and good on the PS2 version.
You can suplex on the GameCube, dude.
No.
Yeah, it says it here. I'm on the GameFAQs forum
Hold on.
for the GameCube. All right, welcome back
All
to
right,
Ben
fine.
and Curt Till It Hurts, the culture cast where Ben is right about suplexes on the GameCube.
So Ben was right about the suplexes. You can suplex.
My memory's a fucking steel trap, Curtis.
On
I remember every wrestling move I've ever done in a video game.
I remember every wrestling move from the GameCube version of Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, there's one. It's the suplex.
I remember all one of them.
Yeah.
In my defense, we looked it up, and there are some differences. That is just not one of them. I was super wrong about that. But it did add, it says on here anyway, the Chicago typewriter, some new outfits. It did add Gangster Leon outfit and Ashley in the suit of armor, which was cool because then she couldn't get hurt. Yeah. Just some weapons, and you could unlock professional mode after beating it on easy, which you couldn't do. Maybe it added some fog, too.
Yeah.
I don't know. It added some small, minor things that...
It's still essentially a GameCube game.
Exactly. I would agree with that 100%.
All right. My next game is Metal Gear Solid 2. You always got to choose between Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3, but I like Metal Gear Solid 2 because the story is crazier.
God, I've never played it.
Yeah, no, that story gets real weird. And it's a beautiful expansion of what Metal Gear Solid. So racist. Metal Gear Solid. That was just I was not making a joke about how Japanese people, because of the way their language works, they tend to, flatten the R and L into essentially one sound that's between
slip,
them.
And you were racist. I'm not
terrible.
bitter that you were right about the suplex thing. It has nothing to do with the suplex.
I'm so sorry that this keeps happening, everybody. Metal Gear Solid 2 is a great game. What's your next game?
Guitar Hero 2. The whole Guitar Hero Rock Band thing was a huge wave that kind of came and went.
Whew, that crested fast and then just burned.
Yeah, and I think of the Guitar Hero games, I think 2 was probably the first one where people were like, this is something. Like, Guitar Hero 1 was cool, but I think 2 was just better. And then, 3 was on PS2 as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Honestly don't remember. 3 was also sick, and then the first 1 or 2 Rock Band was sick. I think Rock Band 2 was pretty good. Yeah. It's all a big fucking blur because they were exactly the same as each other.
It was collective insanity. We were under collective insanity, and when it wore off, fucking retail outlets were just stuck with big old controllers that they had to store somewhere. I
will say, I have been the reason I thought of Guitar Hero as an entry is that I have been fucking obsessed with watching speedrunners of Guitar Hero. It's fucking fascinating. They'll beat a level at 200% speed. It's stuff. Wow. It's fucking ridiculous. Maybe if we have a second before you leave, I'll show you 2 seconds of it.
Jeez.
But yeah, that's my last PS2 game.
Yeah, I got a few more to burn through. Okay. Shadow of the Colossus is a wonderful game.
I really want to play that, and I just never have.
Yeah, it's great. It's a beautiful game. It's one of the most. It's an authentic exploratory experience. You really get to know this area, and very emotional at the end. Psychonauts was a multi-platform game at the time. Came out on GameCube, PS2, and Xbox. I don't know why I associate it so closely with the PS2. I didn't play it on PS2. I played it on PC. I just wanted to put. I don't know. I wanted to talk about it at some point, and I think that it's an important game. I don't know. Don't interrogate me about this. I'm not trying to.
Ben, I'm just sitting here.
Sure, Curtis. Yeah, Psychonauts is a really great platforming game. It's a good platforming game with a great theme. You're at Psychic Summer Camp. Yeah, you run away from the circus to go to summer camp.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great. And Katamari Damacy. Just a totally unique game. You're rolling around, you're picking things up, and you just get bigger and bigger, and eventually you get so big that you start to absorb worlds.
I had never played that. My friend's girlfriend had it, and I remember seeing it and being like, it's so pretentious, just being like, God, what a stupid fucking game. Of course she would like that game and not real video games like me. Mm-hmm. And then I was watching her play it, and I was like, in 10 minutes, I was like, this actually looks kind of cool. I don't think I ever played it, but I enjoyed watching her play it.
It is so charming.
Yeah.
It is so charming. It wins over everybody. And I think it's a great example that, hey, video games don't always have to be violent. Yeah. Video games can be about other things other than hey, it's really easy to program? straight lines.
Yeah.
Right? You know, it's really easy to turn into a straight line. The path of a bullet firing from a fucking gun to murder somebody. Let's make every video game a murder simulator.
And then you'll do a B&E and go eat some fried chicken.
All right, that's enough about the PlayStation 2.
Okay.
GameCube or
GameCube.
Xbox?
Which one came first?
I don't know.
I don't either.
They came out within a week of each other, I believe.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember which one came first.
Let's do Xbox first because I think I can speak more passionately about the GameCube. That'll be
good idea. Yeah, the GameCube will be good to end
ender.
on. What are we on? 1 hour, hour 15. Yeah. All right, we're doing good.
We're doing okay for the amount that we bit off tonight.
Yeah.
First game for me, Punisher.
Yeah.
I think that game, the unique thing about that game is it is, for a long time, movie tie-in games really sucked. They were cool on the Sega Genesis, so like we talked about last time. A lot of the Disney games were really good games, back then. And then a lot of movie. I mean, there have always been shitty movie tie-in games, but there were really good ones too. And I think that for me, the Punisher was like one of the last really good movie tie-in games before it just turned to a wall of shit for a while. Until I think Lego kind of did its part to bring that back, but I don't fucking like Lego games.
There's a Chronicles of Riddick game on Xbox also.
Yeah, that's solid.
Butcher Bay. That's apparently really good. Chronicles of Riddick is also a really good movie.
I don't remember. But yeah, Punisher, sick game. You walk around, you're Frank Castle.
You kill people.
It gives you really creative ways to kill them. You can use your environment to kill them in really horrific ways. You feed a guy to a shark. You can slam a window pane down on a crackhead's head.
Ooh.
You can use like a drill press to kill a guy.
That's gnarly.
You can go into this like rage mode where you're just like, you can just run through a level and like, I believe you tap like buttons at a certain, when it tells you to, and you'll like fucking throw a knife into a guy's throat across the room and fucking snap a guy's neck, and just very, very violent, very Punisher-y. Just, if you love the Punisher and violent murder, that game does not fucking disappoint. It's arguably better than the Thomas Jane movie that it's based off of. Yep.
Steel Battalion.
Never played it.
I never played it either, but do you know about this game?
No.
Steel Battalion is a mech game, right? So you're in a big old tank with legs and you're walking around. But the thing that made Steel Battalion cool was that they made a huge controller that actually looked like the cockpit of a mech. And you had to like flip buttons, and I think one of the things that always came up in reviews that really stuck with me was there was an eject button on the controller, and when you died, if you didn't hit eject, your save game got erased.
That's fucking incredible.
Yeah. I
have always been fascinated with that idea of, whenever you die, you could start over. And I always think, like, what if you didn't, Yeah. I always thought about that when I was a kid. Like, obviously games would have to be cheaper if you only got one try and then it was over, but that's a really cool way to do that.
Yeah, Steel Battalion is crazy. It's a good game, apparently. It's just really unique. I think that Steel Battalion is worth remembering.
Yeah. My next game kind of falls similarly into that, worth remembering. I never really played this game. I just watched my cousin play it, and it looked pretty cool. Doom 3. I think if you're going to play the Xbox, that's probably one of the essential games to grab for it. I just watched my cousin play it. At the time, it was scary as shit. Probably not very scary now.
It's all right.
Yeah.
I actually played Doom 3 recently.
Did you?
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I did a whole paper in college about the sound design of Doom 3. Really good sound design.
What class did that fall under?
Literary analysis. Literary theory and analysis. We were talking about sound theory, right? The study of sound. And Doom 3, Doom 3 was the lens through which I was examining this, but video games in general are really interesting when it comes to sound, because in the world, like in a film, many sounds are kind of incidental. You've got Foley and stuff like that, but in a video game, it's like a garden of sound. You have triggers that make sounds happen, and the player is in some control of when those triggers occur. So playing a video game is a little bit like playing a very simple instrument with really strict parameters, or it's like playing a really interesting advanced instrument sometimes if a game is designed to be like playing an instrument. That's not what Doom 3 is like. Anyway, Doom 3's good.
Agreed.
Yeah. My next one, Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth. One of my favorite games, mostly because I played it at the right time with the right people.
We talked about this on the podcast.
We did
and
recently.
It sounded really cool.
Like a couple weeks ago. I think I specifically talked about the part where you have to like run through these rooms, and it's a real close recreation of a scene from a book, I believe, or a short story that Lovecraft wrote. It's fun. I don't know. It's a good game. Good game, fun game.
My next one is also, I can mostly sum it up by saying good game, fun game. Baldur's Gate, Dark Alliance 2.
Yeah, Dark Alliance, very good.
Solid game.
Yeah.
If one of the glaring weaknesses of console games, this might be, you're probably going to fucking cringe when I say this, is that you did not have any Diablo games, which was like one of the shining games on personal computer. And I think Dark Alliance 2 was a cool... You didn't have Diablo, but you had Baldur's Gate. It was kind of a cool dungeon crawly, explory, pick your favorite type of mythical, fantasy race, and just kind of run around and kill shit. And
hack and slash.
Collect stuff in a cool dungeon. It was just fun. Cool game. Good game, fun game.
Both Halo games. Halo and
okay.
Halo 2. Yeah. I really like these games. I played a lot more of of Halo 2. I never really played the single player campaign of either of these games. I mostly played Halo multiplayer when I went over to a friend's house, and Halo 2 multiplayer when I went over to the teen center on the military base where I lived. So I have some really good game, fun game memories of Halo 2 multiplayer.
That must have been a very unique experience, being obsessed with a group of kids obsessed with Halo who were children of military on a military base.
It was an interesting experience.
Yeah.
You know what? Halo actually got a lot of kids to join ROTC.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, to become
suckers,
to become the Master Chief.
Bet it wasn't as fun as Halo. Probably more rewarding in the end.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I never followed up with any of them about it. I never joined it either.
You guys still like Halo? I did an old telephone right there.
He's like, I'm addicted to opioids.
To be fair, that's like most people our age. So
it's like something. If you call up anybody you knew in high school, there's a 50% chance that they're addicted to opioids.
Don't blame Halo or JROTC for that.
Yep. Do you have any other Xbox games?
Yeah, I have 2/3 more. One of them was tied. Couldn't make a choice. Mortal Kombat Armageddon and Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks. Mortal Kombat Armageddon, I still think, is the greatest Mortal Kombat game.
Those are the ones where you have like an overworld, right?
Yeah, that was. Well,
there
Shaolin
were those
Monks
three ones. Okay.
And you played. It was a co-op game, which was also kind of rare on console games. It was a story. It was unlike any other Mortal Kombat game. There were a few kind of story-based Mortal Kombat games.
They realized that everyone loved the lore so much that they needed to...
and you could tag team with your friend. You could be Liu Kang and Kung Lao and just run around. And it was more of a hack and slash than a traditional Mortal Kombat type game. But I believe it would go to Mortal Kombat style side-by-side fighting at points. It was just really cool co-op game. And then Mortal Kombat Armageddon was the last traditional Mortal Kombat game before they did like a soft reboot. Actually, I don't know if it was a soft reboot or like a hard reboot.
Describe the difference.
Or a squee-boot.
Nobody knows.
Mortal Kombat Armageddon had like 70 playable characters. So if you had played a Mortal Kombat game and you liked a character, you were going to get to be that character again. And that was the coolest thing because it was the first game that had all of the ninjas as playable characters. And just even the characters you didn't give a shit about, they were there, which was nice.
Which was characters you didn't give a shit about. 68 of them.
Yeah. I'm pretty hardcore into Mortal Kombat, so I think I like probably about half for something.
35, you can name 35 Mortal Kombat characters.
We don't have time, but I could. Start with the hard ones. Mocap, Meat, Striker.
Yeah.
We could go there. We won't. We're already at an hour 20. But
all right, my last Xbox game The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind.
Okay, I never played Morrowind.
It is of historical significance. It was the first Elder Scrolls game that made it to consoles, and it gathered like a cult following. And then fucking Oblivion came out on the 360 and changed the entire face of video games forever. But Morrowind is the best Elder Scrolls game, in my opinion. It doesn't have all the shitty parts of the open world games, but it feels like an honest-to-God adventure. Also, I played it when I was an adolescent, so it imprinted upon me. So I can't judge it honestly.
Sure. What is the general consensus for best Elder Scrolls game?
There is no general consensus.
Okay.
Many people like Skyrim the best because it was the biggest one.
Yeah.
A lot of people, one of the ways that people enjoy Elder Scrolls games is to play them and then go talk to their friends about them, or to watch streamers play them and get up to crazy shenanigans. And Skyrim was the one that came out when streaming video games online was really blowing up. So many people have imprinted upon it for that reason as the best Elder Scrolls game. There is an undercurrent of critical consensus among serious video game YouTubers, massive air quotes around that because I don't want to sound like a prick, that the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind is the best designed Elder Scrolls game because it doesn't have like quest markers that you have to just follow. It feels like more than just... Let me finish the previous sentence before diving into a new one. There are not quest markers that you need to follow, so it feels like an actual adventure.
Yeah.
You know, you have to think about where you're going. You don't just fast travel to wherever wherever the little icon on your map tells you to go. I have a lot of contempt for modern open world video game design.
I feel you on that because especially you take a look at Skyrim, a huge, beautiful open world, and half the time you're not paying attention to it because you're just looking at your marker. And
also, it looks very nice, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not a well-designed open world because they didn't design it to be traversed. They designed it to be like big playgrounds that you're gonna fast travel through. You're gonna walk through these places once, so they need to look good once.
Yeah.
Whereas Morrowind, the fast travel system it's like navigating a subway system. You have these like silt striders, these big bugs. And a bigger city is going to have more connections. So if you're in a little town and you need to get to another little town, you're going to take a silt strider to a big hub, and you're going to walk around a little bit and check some shit out, right? Maybe check in on one of the quests that you picked up. And then you're going to take the silt strider to another hub, maybe that's closer to the other little city that you need to get to. And then you're going to go to the small settlement that you need to get to. Excellent game. I've just talked myself into saying that Morrowind is definitely the best Elder Scrolls game. Anyone who doesn't think that is misguided.
I believe my buddy Dalton, who I used to do a podcast with, his favorite Morrowind is one of his favorite games.
Dalton and I should talk Morrowind sometime.
It might be his favorite video game.
It's a good contender for best video game of all time.
My last Xbox game is, I saved it for last because I truly feel like it perfectly fits that both categories of I played this, it is fun, I love it, and essential playing, and that is Fable.
Okay.
I fucking love Fable.
Yeah.
I think it's a really cool world to be thrown. It's a humorous world, but with some serious shit going on. I think it has a really cool... I really like the controllers and the mechanics of the game where you can kind of, dual wield some spells, and then you have your weapons too.
It's a good action adventure.
Great game. A lot of secret stuff to poke around if you want, but you don't have to. But then at the same time, it's not overwhelming with secret stuff. The secret stuff is there and it's rewarding if you want to do it, but like you don't have to. Like you can get the fucking frying pan if you want.
Nice.
Spoilers. It's a frying pan from 12 years ago. And you can also get all the silver keys to open the chests. It's rewarding to do it, but you don't feel like it's not Harvest Moon 64 where you're like, someday I'm going to go back and do that shit. Like,
someday I'm going to get that last key.
Great action adventure game. That's up.
That's it for the Xbox, the Microsoft Xbox. Ooh, the secret thing about the Dreamcast that I wanted to bring up. The Dreamcast lasted only 2 years, unless you buy into the conspiracy theory that I saw put forth a couple years ago, which is that, okay, Sega shut down the Dreamcast and said, all right, nobody else is making Dreamcast games. We're not going to make games for it anymore either. We're going to be a third-party company. But the console division of Sega apparently a lot of the people who worked on the Dreamcast project moved over and were bought up by Microsoft to develop the Xbox. So there is a very real case to be made that the Xbox is like a continuation of the Dreamcast. That Microsoft, I mean, do you remember when Microsoft entered the console arena?
Vaguely.
Like, it was a big thing. I was reading a lot of video game magazines at that time, so the idea that like video game consoles came from Japan, that was just where they came from.
Yeah.
Then Microsoft is like, we're going to do one. You know, we're going to get into this market. And they ended up eating a big loss on the Xbox. It did not do well. But I do like this idea that they took this beloved console, the Dreamcast, and like zombie revived it and turned it into their entry into the console market. That like Sega died and was reborn as Microsoft in the console space. I don't know. I think that's a really neat idea. Also, the Xbox had like Shenmue 2 and I don't know, other it had like a Panzer Dragoon game on it. So Microsoft knew that they had a Japan problem. The Xbox did terribly in Japan. I think the Xbox still does terribly in Japan. It just never caught on because Japan is a little bit xenophobic. But I like that story.
That is nice.
Whether or not it's completely true, whether or not it's completely the actual facts of what happened, I think that spiritually, as a story, as part of the story, the great overriding story of video games, I like that idea.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about the GameCube.
Let's do that. Okay. How should you want to do one first?
No, you go ahead. I just talked about the fucking Xbox for 10 minutes.
This is gonna be real quick because we have a whole episode dedicated to it. Animal Crossing.
Hell yeah.
Fucking phenomenal.
Yep, that's on my list too.
Go listen to the episode. It's fucking incredible.
You know what we can talk about now though? Animal Crossing Pocket Camp.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
I hate it.
Yeah, it's fucking sucks, right?
It's so bad.
I played it for like 4 days straight, and then today I was on my break. I had posted a screenshot from it, and one of my friends was like, "Add me," and I was like, "I'm probably never gonna play that game."
Dog shit. Yeah, it's still on my phone only because I don't want to think about it long enough to delete it.
Do you have to like do gigantic fucking updates every time you turn it on?
The game?
Yeah,
I haven't turned the game on in 6 days.
God, that was such a bummer.
Such a disappointment.
So excited when that came out.
After we recorded the last episode, you were like, "Holy shit, Animal Crossing Pocket Camp came out," and I was like, "Holy shit!" We were both so excited about it.
And we even added each other.
We added each other on it, and then I think we both probably realized around the same time that there is nothing to do in that game other than spend money.
Yeah. Freemium games are fucking insulting.
They're destroying video games.
It's just
these are the video games that kids are growing up with too. Like no kid is playing Animal Crossing. They're playing Animal Crossing Pocket Camp and they think they're getting the experience. Or they're playing whatever Animal Crossing is on the 3DS.
I am never going to be I hate when anyone generalizes. I know you're just like joking and talking, but
I'm not joking.
Not entirely joking. But I don't think you're saying that video games today suck, you know.
I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I'm not saying that.
But I think
I love video games.
Me too. But I do think there are some great games coming out today, and it's not like all hope is lost with kids. But it is scary to think that this is what a video game is to some kids. Yeah. And I think about the age you are when you could play Pocket Camp and like get into it, and I think I don't want to sound like a fucking wrong generation or
old man video games,
a fucking defender, but instead of having that experience at that age, I was discovering Pokemon and Super Mario RPG and like Breath of Fire 2, these like really intense, big story-based games that were fascinating. Ocarina of Time, and I just think like, how sad would it be if that is what video games became for everyone? Yeah. And that would suck because Pocket Camp is fucking dog shit.
Pocket Camp is so bad. It like takes everything that made Animal Crossing great, all the character, not just the characters themselves, but the character of the village. You know, the feeling that you're actually moving into a new place with like kind of a basic social element to it. Yep. And it replaces it with currency. It replaces it with capitalism. It replaces it with endless acquisitiveness. It's like case in point, one of the things that I love about the original Animal Crossing that I didn't remember that I loved until they fucked it up in Pocket Camp, which happened many times, this is just one of them, is in Pocket Camp you can make any item you want, anytime you want, as long as you have enough money. Whereas in Animal Crossing, you have to check the shop every day. Because there are only, in the basic shop, there are only 3 items there. You go, you look. If there isn't the one that you want, it's like, whatever, I'll go pull my weeds and fucking...
log out till tomorrow.
Yeah, log out till tomorrow, check again tomorrow. But if the one that you want is in there, it's like you won a slot machine, you know? It's like you...
Because you did.
You did. You literally did. The random number generator threw out the correct thing, and there you go. Pocket Camp is an insult.
My biggest one that was insulting to me was... The feeling of Animal Crossing is exactly like you said. You're moving into this town. It feels there are all these animals that have this little society in a way, and you don't know them. You're getting to know them. You're decorating your house how you like it, and you're collecting items, and you're doing favors for these people, and it just feels like a very nice little community, even if it's on this like kind of superficial level. And then in this game, you're like, oh, hey, an animal. I want to talk to it, and I want to be its friend. And then you're like, oh, you should invite this animal to your camp. And they're like, oh, man, I will, but only if you have a PA. You're like, what the fuck? Like, that completely ruins everything good about Animal Crossing. You can't decorate your little space the way you feel comfortable decorating it because it's your space. And animals judge you and won't come visit you unless you spend the money to have them build your area to their specifications.
Yeah.
I'm furious.
I'm getting mad. We can't talk about this anymore.
No, next.
Listen to the Animal Crossing episode if you want to hear more about how much
heartfelt
we love Animal Crossing. Fuck Pocket Camp. The game I want to talk about now is Super Mario Sunshine.
Okay. I'm on board for this.
It's a wonderful game. So much fun. The thing that Nintendo always does is what people want from Nintendo, and I think the best, we'll talk about this a little bit in a second, but the thing people want from Nintendo is like, no, just do the thing from my childhood over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But they're never satisfied with that. They always want to add something new. They always want to add some new twist to the formula. So what people wanted from the GameCube Mario game was like just Super Mario 64 with better graphics. Come on, guys, just do that again. We loved that. Yep. But Nintendo said, no. You're going to get something quite different.
Something you didn't even want.
You're going to get something you didn't know you wanted. You're going to get a game about cleaning up graffiti.
I think that worked on you, but I think most people did not love Super Mario Sunshine.
I don't know if most people loved it. But like the Isle Delfino, it's like this, I don't know, it's like a Mediterranean wonderland. And you go into these different levels, which admittedly get a little bland after a while. But yeah, I just really like Super Mario Sunshine. I think the levels feel really different from Super Mario 64, but not necessarily in a bad way.
Yeah.
Super Mario 64 has a lot more of the pure platforming element to it, whereas Super Mario Sunshine gets a little more challenging.
I think it's a bit of a trade-off. I think the level design is less good in Sunshine, but the overworld design is a lot better.
Okay.
I think Super Mario 64 feels the overworld. Maybe that's just now. I wanted to say it feels a lot more skeletal than because they were just figuring it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, what's yours?
See, this is weird. I kind of get into some more franchise type shit, but the greatest thing for me about the GameCube was that it would take franchises and give you a lot of games from that franchise on one console, which is always really cool to me. So I kind of have, these are like two things that I don't really have much to say about, but the GameCube is the only console that has Resident Evil 0, 1, 2, 3, Code Veronica, and 4 on one console.
Well, the collector in you loves the...
I love it.
Yeah.
And it allows you... They were kind of... The first ones were all ports. Well, not necessarily, because 0 was a brand new game exclusive to the GameCube.
Yeah.
1 was the HD remake, RE-make, which just took everything that was great in Resident Evil, made it prettier. It was fine.
Well, and they added some stuff as well.
Yeah, they added... speaking of which, I
Crimson
really
zombies.
pissed my pants when I bumped into a crimson head
Yeah.
on the Resident Evil the other day.
Yeah. You kill zombies and they stay on the ground, and if
Yeah.
you don't burn them, they will come back in a while. It's
faster,
another one of those
stronger.
It's another one of those things because you can't. We've talked about this on the podcast already, but you don't have enough resources to burn all the zombies.
Right.
So you're going to have to judge, like, all right, do I need to run through this place a lot?
Yeah.
Is this worth? Because crimson heads are hard to take down, right?
Hard to get away from
Yeah.
too, especially in some tight areas. So you had 0, which was exclusive to the GameCube, a whole new story. 1 was an HD remake. 2, 3, and Code Veronica were direct ports, so you just got to play them again on a new console. And then it kind of all came up to Resident Evil 4, which is one of the greatest video games of all time.
Resident Evil 4 redefined what it means to be a video game.
Yep.
Yep.
So just a fantastic way to re-experience and reimagine and get a brand new video game, all from the same franchise, all on the same console.
GameCube, man.
Fucking GameCube.
GameCube. My next one, Resident Evil 4 is on my list, but we already talked about it on the PS2 section. F-Zero GX.
I never played that.
Oh, it's so good. So hard.
I never liked the first F-Zero.
Like on the Super Nintendo?
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah.
It's real different. It's one of the prettiest games on the GameCube. For me, one of the prettiest games, bar none. I never beat the whole thing, but I did get pretty good at it. And when you're good at that game, it's another one of those games that's it's easy to learn the basics. It's easy to kind of get going. You can even beat a couple of the easy races. But when you bump up to the harder difficulties, you get that great feeling in a video game where it's like, I'm never going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And I don't believe anybody can do this. I don't believe that this is possible.
This is bullshit. This
And
is
then,
not
but
real.
you still feel compelled. You keep playing, you keep practicing, and eventually you find that you're doing things in the game that you never even thought would have been possible. You're strategizing. You're like, all right, I know I need to take that car out first,
Yeah.
because otherwise he's going to beat me in this race. And then, I need to hit this turn in this exact right way, or my time's going to be fucked, and I'm not going to be able to win this race. Oh, yeah, F-Zero GX. I no longer own a copy of F-Zero GX, and it's one of my greatest shames.
I know what that's like to have gotten rid of a game that you should not have gotten rid of.
Regrets, man. Regrets.
there's
Years
some-
and years down the line.
I have some hard video game lost regrets. Mainly because when you were a kid, you didn't have any fucking money, so you had to sell the games you had to get new ones. And pretty bad deal most of the time.
It was more like, for me, it was more like when I turned like 18 or 19, I kind of got disillusioned with video games around when the Wii came out.
I can't wait to talk about the Wii
Oh,
next
man.
time.
As video games are all downhill from here, guys. And I thought, like, I'm never going to play these other games, but it turns out that my disillusionment had just cast a bad shadow on the previous masterpieces that I had been playing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Regrets. This isn't the regrets cast. What's your next game?
Next is just another shout out to a franchise as a whole. The Tony Hawk franchise on the GameCube was fucking phenomenal. You had 3, 4, Underground 2, and American Wasteland, which Tony Hawk games had peaked at this point. Depending on where, depends on the player. But they had definitely peaked by American Wasteland. But they were still good. You could play them. Each one continued to add things and maintain what they had added before. It was just at this point that, depending on who you are as a player, these additions became unnecessary.
After the revert, right?
Yep.
Tony Hawk 3 was the revert, or the spine transfer. I forget.
I think Spine Transfer was 4.
Manual was 2.
2.
The revert was 3.
3.
The revert made it so that you could link together one string of tricks the whole time. There would never be a trick that you would do that would stop your combo.
Yeah.
Which is a neat idea. That's something that Tony Hawk needed.
And really changed the whole face of the game itself, because before you could do that, a high score in a level would be like 50,000 points.
Yeah.
And as soon as you could do that, the trick multiplier just made scores insane, and it became like 100,000 points.
Well, yeah, because you have 2 minutes, but the clock can get to 0, and as long as you have a running combo, you can keep doing tricks.
I think the 6 score in the last level of Tony Hawk 3 is like 750,000 versus 50,000 in the first game, or 60,000. They were phenomenal. And 4 added spine transfers underground, so you could get off your board and drive, which was fucking awful. But
so weird.
It was because of Grand Theft Auto. It was all Grand Theft Auto was to blame. And then it just kept going. But yeah, great games, great franchise. I like being able to play them all on the same console.
My last game is The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker.
Yeah, how did I not think of Wind Waker?
I don't know.
I'm glad you did, because that game is fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker is a great game, and it's the one that I wanted to talk about with regards to Nintendo getting pressure to do the same thing over and over again and saying, no. And always...
We're going to give you a living boat.
Yeah, we're going to give you a boat that talks. B, it doesn't look anything like those N64 games. It's all cel-shaded. Do you remember the uproar when they said that Wind Waker was going to not look like that Space World demo that they had come out with, that everyone jizzed?
I didn't know you were going to finish that the way you did. You should have known, because you're super smart about video games and in life.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for saying that.
I didn't want to limit it. I didn't want to hold you back to one thing.
Holding
like
back to video games.
We are all about eliminating categories.
Video games been holding me back my whole life.
On B and C till at H, we eliminate categories. But yeah, people flipped their lids when they saw that it was cel shaded, but partially because, as you pointed out, they had released a graphics demo. And it looked fucking incredible, by the way.
At the time, yeah.
Still looks pretty fucking sick, I think.
It's alright. I don't like the character design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. Great game.
Wind Waker is awesome.
I have some real special feels about Wind Waker. I was older than my brother, 3 years older. My grandfather used to have us, come over to, help him do yard work and shit, and he would pay us. And I worked really hard, from when we got up to when we stopped, I worked really hard. My brother was too young. He wasn't lazy. He just couldn't work hard all day. So my grandfather, at the end of the day, gave my little brother $20, and then he pulled me aside, and he was like, hey, just so you know, I recognize that you really worked really hard today. And he gave me $50. And he said, don't tell your brother that I gave you this much money, but you really earned it today. So as a young man, Curt, that meant so much. And then
$50 is a lot of fucking money.
It's exactly enough to buy Wind Waker. And so I bought that game with a sense of pride that I had probably not had at any point up to that, because it's fair to assume any game I had ever played up to that point I had traded for on the playground, or my parents had bought me for Christmas or my birthday. So it was really the first game I ever bought and was proud of buying. And then the sense of exploration and just openness as you're cruising through the open world, and you're looking all around you with the awesome C-stick on the GameCube, and you can't see anything, and you're just cruising around in the boat. It was so different.
Well, they diverted away from Majora's Mask, from that style. But they kept what they honed in on was in Ocarina of Time. The first time you go out to Hyrule Field, you get this incredible sense of adventure. It's I can see in the distance in all directions. What's that over there? I want to go check it out. What's that up there? I want to go check it out. I'm going to find all this shit. And they took that feeling and they expanded it. In Wind Waker, you see the shape of an island, and you think, that looks neat. That silhouette looks neat as hell. I'm going to go check that out. And then you do, and it's usually rad.
And it is neat as hell.
Yeah, it is neat as hell.
I think after I get through the remake, I'm going to have to go back into some Wind Waker. Yeah.
That's video games.
That's it. I only have one more GameCube game, and it doesn't even hold up to Wind Waker. It was a weird way for us to do that. But Harvest Moon Magical Melody.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of Harvest Moon, Magical Melody is, from a technical standpoint, the best Harvest Moon game before they started to go downhill. It came out towards the end of the GameCube's life. So the 360 was out. So achievements existed now. And Harvest Moon Magical Melody had an achievement system in the game that was different from achievements. And it was just it was great. It was a great world with great characters that had everything that Harvest Moon games had. It was cel-shaded as well. So it looked really cool and charming and playful, which really matched the style of that game well. And these achievements, and for me anyway, and I think for a lot of players, pushed you to accomplish things in the game that you would have, if you didn't want to do it, you could have pretended that part of Harvest Moon didn't exist until you had this checklist of, hey, you haven't done this, by the way. You should probably go do that. It just took everything that was good about Harvest Moon and added to it, made it better, and everything else, every Harvest Moon game after that has been worse than Magical Melody.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's it for me on that anyway. You got anything else for that?
What conclusions have we drawn here today?
Are we still trying to say the best console from each generation?
I don't know.
As we go further, I feel less capable of doing it.
I do too, because all of them pale in comparison to the GameCube.
You know what my thing was? Is you're right. But I felt bad after the episode last week with the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. I prefer the Super Nintendo. I think I would much rather play one any given day of the week, but I can totally see why somebody would like the Genesis and prefer the Genesis. I think they went for different styles of games. And just because I think the Super Nintendo is quote-unquote better, that doesn't mean there aren't fucking phenomenal games on the Genesis that you should never write off the Genesis. And I kind of feel that way now with this too, especially where these there's some weird consoles in these generations, like the Saturn and the Dreamcast, and even arguably like the first Xbox, where they were kind of trying to figure out how to get into the game. That maybe they're not the best of all time, but you should experience that. It was cool to experience, and there are cool things to go back and experience. Don't not play Fable, because I think the Xbox is not as good as the GameCube. So I feel weird now saying that one is better than the other.
Yeah, we might have to rethink the structure of this series.
Halfway through the series. Hey, you know what? Ben and Curt Till It Hurts is the only show where you can do that. We're not fucking committing to anything.
No, and when we do commit to something, we don't mean it.
Yeah.
Hey, we're different people now than we were a week ago.
Yeah, and that's why we're here.
Yeah.
We're growing and learning. Hopefully our listeners are doing the same thing with us. Or they're like, you guys are fucking idiots and you don't plan out a goddamn thing. Which, hey.
Point taken.
We wouldn't have fucking wound up with Texorcism if we had planned things.
Nope.
So
Texorcism was a stroke of genius, though.
That was.
Have we ever since?
Special.
Has there been an episode since Texorcism where we didn't jerk each other off about Texorcism?
I have a weird, in my brain, I don't know what ends up on the episode versus what we talk about in real life outside of recording. It's a weird, I don't know if that's normal for other people, but it's all a fucking fog to
We're
me.
going to be talking about Texorcism for years. Until we do something better than Texorcism, we're going to be talking about Texorcism.
All right. Can I say one last thing to stroke our ego about
Sure.
Texorcism?
Yep.
2-part question.
All right.
Did you ever think we would do something better than our Tarantino review? Because I didn't.
I didn't either.
Second part, did you think that if we did, it would be that much sooner? That close to the Tarantino thing?
Yeah.
I think we're hitting a pretty good fucking stride.
Well, think about the gap between Tarantino. This is terrible.
We're so awesome.
We should end the episode and then talk about how great we are. We got it flipped. All right. You want to do plugs?
Yeah, I'll do plugs.
All right.
Thank you for listening. As you guys know, you can listen to more Ben and Curt Till It Hurts and Black Gold Podcast by subscribing to Black Gold Podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. You can also stream it from Buzzsprout or YouTube. If you're a listener of the show, please give us a rating or drop us a review on iTunes. It helps the show a lot. Ben and I really appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at CurtCake5K. Last time I plugged Snups, which I've been using a little bit, but I'm basically like a whore for every social media site. So I'm on Letterboxd, and if there's a social media site, you could probably search CurtCake5K and you'll find a dead to active account on it somewhere on the spectrum. So follow me at CurtCake5K wherever you'd like to. That's about it for now. Next time, we'll be talking about which consoles?
I don't know if I forget.
Xbox 360, PS3,
Wii.
the Wii. Are we doing the generation after that?
Should we? I don't know. I feel like console generations kind of end.
Yeah.
Let's commit to doing that generation.
Yeah, we'll plan it out throughout the week. Maybe I will say, all right, here's what I'm going to say. We're making a plan right now.
All right.
At the very least, we'll give a shout out to some of our favorite or most memorable games from further generations.
Well, yeah, because everything flattens after that.
I can't say shit about the Xbox One. It's
No,
a fucking fancy Blu-ray player, in my opinion. Like,
Yeah.
it's a Blu-ray player that you can also play Wolfenstein on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's it. We're gonna end this. We'll go to the credits, and you might be able to hear us jerk ourselves off at the end of the credits a little bit.
No, we're not. Oh, God. For some reason, jerking ourselves off is much worse than jerking each other off, in my mind.
We're just going to stay here and just jerk
Jerk
ourselves off.
Hi, Mom.
Does your mom listen to the show?
Yeah, I think she does.
Hi,
Yeah.
Ben's mom.
Yeah.
I'm glad you listen. I hope we're not a disappointment to you.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you to
Everybody.
even Ben's mom.
Especially Ben's mom.
Especially Ben's mom.
And Megan. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Megan.
Thank you for everything.
I gotta hang out with you again soon, Megan, but I feel weird because I always just invite myself to your house, your guys' house, and I feel weird doing that.
Nah, don't feel weird about it, man. That's exactly how it needs to happen, because nobody ever reaches out to anybody anymore. So, like, reaching out to somebody warrants inviting yourself over. Yeah. It's that big of a leap.
Thank you to Ben's mom for raising Ben. He's a handsome young man.
Hey, thank you.
Great podcast
Oh
co-host.
my God, thank you so much. Curtis, who do you know that listens?
Nobody.
Nobody? All right. Well.
Jake and our longtime listener, Brad.
Jake and Brad, thank you for raising Curtis. He's a wonderful young man. Very insightful, very intelligent.
Thank you. This is nice.
This is really good.
We
should
like
do
the
this
Jerry
at the end of every
final
episode.
Moment. We should do this every time.
Yeah.
Think of something positive.
We divide about Sonic at the beginning, and then we reconcile at the end. We realize
now I'm mad again.
Ben's mom, fuck you for not buying him a Genesis.
We're about to hit 2 hours. We gotta wrap this up.
Bye,
All
everybody.
Right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Everyone. Oh, I was supposed to do the music, wasn't I? I forgot I don't do that in post anymore.
It took us months of, like, what do you call it, when a bear hibernates. It took us months of hibernating and, like, just mulling over ideas to come up with something as good as Texorcism. So I forget what the distance was, but it was like 4 or 5 months, I'm pretty sure.
I always feel weird when I like doing those, like, one-shot episodes or, like, mini-parters, but, like, because that's what we kind of started doing. But then I think that now they feel like a weird, like, well, we need something to do in between our real ideas, which, I mean, maybe there's probably a place for both of them, but
I think there are some ideas that are better suited to the one-offs and some that are better suited to a longer series. For instance, I think the Zack Snyder series is something that we should definitely pursue.
Yeah.
I think he's a fascinating director.
We'll
get to watch Sucker Punch. That's going to be great.
Get to? I've actually never seen it. I've just heard people shit all over it.
Yeah.